Hey and welcome to this video. If it's your first time here, my name is Lachlan Rowson.
I'm Raf.
And we are Australia's #1 health and fitness podcast, The Mind Muscle Project. So, if you're here, what you can expect from us in the future is...
Well, we interview the biggest names in fitness. On Mondays, we've had Matt Fraser, Brent Fikowski, Pat Mellon, pretty much all the boys.
On Wednesdays, we talk about our athletic experience in our mid to early 20s. We've been to regionals multiple times. We talk about the most current and the most exciting new stuff in our industry.
And on Fridays, on the podcast, we delve into fitness business. So we've started 3 gyms ourselves, and we talk about where we want to go with them, how we're doing it, and how to succeed in the fitness industry.
So if you want to see more from us in the future, more exciting content, interviews, we've got heaps of stuff. You can go to the links below. We've got our website. We've got the top 10 most downloaded podcasts of all time. You guys will really enjoy those. And we've got plenty more content on our Instagram, so go there as well. And if you like videos, subscribe to the YouTube channel down below.
All right, Mind Muscle Project, welcome back to another episode with Brent Fikowski, which brings it to 5 or 6 episodes. I don't know, we've been chipping away at it for a while, but I feel like this time, like the first time, there's heaps of new stuff to talk about, which we are definitely excited to get into. And maybe you haven't shared at length or as in depth as you're about to, which is pretty cool. So probably the first thing I wanted to talk to you about before all the recent stuff that you mentioned was what it has been like over the last 12 months to, for people that didn't know, you left your accounting job, you lost that edge of having something else to distract you from your training. And so now you're all in, hence the documentary title. So what has that been like? Or walk us through that decision to leave and what it's been like since.
Yeah, so basically this time last year, I was still working full time, and then it was January where I moved to part-time. And then it was only, early October when I quit. So at the filming of this episode, I've just only recently quit my job. And so super bizarre. I mean, I went to, I finished high school. I went to college, university to get an accounting degree. And that was my, intended career path to make money to pay for rent and stuff. So yeah, I mean, the decision was basically, obviously, as I mentioned, kind of gradual, where in January, I was just becoming really overwhelmed. I had a lot of stuff on the go. I was a little bit stressed with trying to balance training and work, and then some other requirements, with sponsors, and just seemed like I keep adding more and more to my list of things that I feel I need to do to stay good and get better at CrossFit. And that list only gets bigger. And it was just getting too big. So went to part-time and then decided to just go all in on the fitness side of things and be a professional athlete at the age of 27. And yeah, just make that work and make that be my sole focus so that when I wake up in the morning, my mental and my physical energy is primarily dedicated to training and to my body. And then secondary, there's a lot of other secondary things. But before, I got really, really good by always making enough time for training. And when I was there, I went at 100%. But throughout the day, honestly, my training wasn't the priority. It was my job, or it was, all these other things. And I just made time for training, and I trained very intelligently, I think. But now, hopefully, obviously I still train intelligently, but there'll just be more hours in the gym. And then when I'm not in the gym, my energy is still thinking about what I'm going to do sort of for the next session. So it's exciting.
Nice. Did you have a level of anxiety about not knowing what to do after training that you weren't used to, or did you manage that pretty quickly?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the reasons I kept the job, well, one, I liked it. I loved going to work. There were great people there, and I enjoyed, I got a lot of satisfaction from what I was doing. If I didn't, I would have quit a long time ago. This was the best job I've ever had at Straw House. And so I've had other jobs before that I would, if I was working that job and then I started to experience some success in CrossFit and I was like, I think I can pay the bills, I would have quit because they weren't good jobs, but this was a great job. So I worried, there was definitely some worry that, having that I used to be able to close the book on training and be like, all right, training's done for the day. And then if you have an injury or something, it's not like the end of the world. Whereas now, if I get injured, it's like, well, there goes everything potentially. So there's that potential for stress, but so far it's been fine. And I've still been really busy with, we're going to talk about this, but with the Professor project and planning upcoming trips, and obviously with the upcoming season changes, I could be traveling a lot. So I think it's a good time to do it.
So if you get back an extra 10 hours in your day, what do you fill those 10 hours with now? Are you doing more training, or are you just trying to chill out, play video games, work on your sponsorships, that sort of thing?
I am training more. So I have been starting to train sort of twice a day, actually. Sort of spreading out the sessions a bit. So, the morning session is sort of what I would traditionally be doing this time of year, which is, getting stronger. And then the evening session is, I think, 2 times a week is just some monostructural cyclical conditioning work, which I didn't do in most of my off seasons because I was like, well, I'm fit enough and I don't have time, so it's fine. And then the other 3 or so evening sessions are gymnastic skill based work. So just lots of progressions on holding positions and, some slow and controlled muscle up drills, or like just, beat swings, and lots of handstands just to slowly over the next, 12 months or so, hopefully I'm just that little bit better on my hands, and, my technique and my bar muscle ups and my chest to bars is just that much better.
Yeah.
So yeah, more training. Yeah.
Do you feel like were you doing that training going into the games? What you said, you went to part-time in January, and then when did you leave? In March?
Sorry, I went to part-time in January, and then I quit my job here just in October. So just like a week ago.
Oh, okay.
Right. I thought you meant last October.
Sorry.
So you just quit.
No, I just quit. Yeah. I haven't even officially, I've got to make a photo or something. I haven't posted about the fact that I'm like, I don't have a job anymore except for CrossFit as of a week ago.
Okay. How much of an impact did part-time make in your prep for the whole season? Do you think it was much of a difference?
Man, it's funny. I moved to part-time, and it didn't feel that much different. That was part of the thing is it's a tech company. So I was still very much on call. Like I'd have, I was checking my emails often, and I was on Slack and text. And so I felt like I was always still sort of communicating with the office, and, there wasn't like it wasn't like I worked at Burger King where I would come in, put on the napkin, the freaking whatever, and work for 10 hours a week, and then I was gone, and it was completely out of my mind. It was always in my mind. Just like when you have a university course, you're thinking, I should probably be studying.
Yeah.
And so it still occupied a lot of space. And then I was still just really busy with stuff around the house. Like at the time, Claire was studying for a big exam for her nursing. And so, she wasn't able to help out as much as she did in previous years. So, because it was super important for her to do that. And yeah, no, it was busy. I mean, I think it definitely helped. I don't know how now that I don't work full time, I have no idea how I did it. When people ask now, I'm just like, I don't even know. Like, I have no idea how, especially in 2016 when I was like fully trained. I was like fully working 8 hours a day or 7.5 hours a day and training like a lot. I'm like, and people ask me how I did that. I'm just like, I actually don't know. Like, I'm like not even sure, it's like the whole fake news thing when you like look back on a memory and it's distorted and you're like, maybe did I have a time machine? Like, was there 2 of me? I'm not really sure. Maybe I didn't train as much and then I look back at what I was doing in training. I'm like, yeah, no, I trained a lot. I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Well, I think it was super impressive at the time. But now I guess you can feel and understand what it's like to be Matt Fraser and have all the time in the world to just crush it. So hopefully that'll make a big difference. We actually spoke to, when we were speaking to Pat, after the games this year, I think it was just like maybe 4 or 5 days after it finished. He said that, I'm not sure if you were in this conversation. I definitely remember him saying EKG was in the conversation and maybe like one other person, but they all looked at each other and said, we can do better than this. We can beat Matt, or we should come a lot closer than what we did this year. I'm not sure. Were you in that conversation, and how do you feel about those comments?
Yeah. I had that conversation sort of twice with Vellner once the games was done. And I think it was like right after when we were kind of all slapping 5 after the yoke carry. And I was like, Vellner, man, like one of us has to freaking catch him this year. Like we got to put on a show for these people. Like we can be better. He's like, I know. I'm like, I'm just like, we got to do it. Like, I want to do it. It needs to happen. One of us has to do it. Hopefully both of us. And then I think again, that night at the after party, we bumped into BKG and we all sort of talked about it. And it was like, go team, not Matt. And I like Matt. I get along with Matt Fraser really well. But I think he wants it too. Like, I'm sure he'd love to be pushed. And hopefully this is part of the equation for me. It's like you said, I can just, I'm training harder right now than I was last year. You know, as simple as that sounds, it's like I'm putting in a little more work and I still feel healthy. And I'm working harder. You know, every session I'm finishing, I'm like, yeah, like you went pretty freaking hard today. And so, you know, I couldn't, a lot of times last year it was an afterthought, and I put in enough work, but it was, you know, just enough. So hopefully it'll add up. All those little hours this year will add up to make sense come Madison after I make it through the maze.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you feel like was there much of a change in how your training went? I imagine it would. I know there's obviously the change of coaches. We'll get into that, but with the announcement, was there any concern or there's nothing really concrete has come out just yet exactly. I mean, we know the gist of it, but what were your overall thoughts, or what were your initial thoughts? And then how do you feel about it now after the announcement that, you know, there's no regionals?
Yeah. Let me think. Trying to think of a succinct way. I keep rambling, so I'm going to start tightening things up here for you guys. You know, at first I said, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, I just need to keep training and, you know, don't get caught up in the drama of it all. And then I got caught up in it a little bit, and now I'm not anymore. But basically, I got a little freaked out there for a little bit. Like, why am I even training? Is this thing going to exist in a month? No.
Yeah.
There was a little freak out, I'll be honest. But I'm fine now. And so the biggest thing, you know, if you're listening to this right now, don't think about why they're doing this, or if it's good or if it's bad, because you don't have a say in it. And the only thing you should be thinking about is, how do I fit in to this new system that's being created? Right. So, you know, if you're a gym owner, or if you run a competition, or if you're an athlete or a coach or a company or whatever, or, you know, a company that makes media, it's like, well, you know, the media staff, a lot of them just got let go. So there's an opportunity there. And if you're, you know, running a competition, obviously there's a possibility you could be sanctioned, or a feeder competition into being sanctioned the year after that. And as an athlete, it's just different, right? I mean, I don't know if it's going to be better or worse. We're going to have to wait and see, but there's still opportunities to compete. And I mean, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to maybe having, you know, 2 to 3 regional-esque competitions. I mean, I like the idea of tapering for, like, you know, one big event each year, but I also love competing. And so, you know, we were kind of put into a situation where it made sense to only prepare for one, but now I might have to do 2 or 3, which is exciting. You know, I like competing. Competing's fun. So as far as training, yeah, like I kind of already mentioned, you know, the off season this year is presumably going to be shorter. So, you know, I'm not just doing like a huge strength cycle, nor is it as needed right now in my development as an athlete, because the strength stuff is not as much of a weakness as it used to be. So it's more just a general CrossFit, a little bit of everything type approach right now.
Yeah.
It does seem like you mentioned, what you can control, that one of the biggest changes is that for the actual athletes, like the certainty they have about what they're preparing for has gone down dramatically. Like, you have no idea what they're going to pull out at the sanctioned events in terms of programming. And you even have very little idea about what the CrossFit Games are going to be now, because they have like the crazy cull day where they cull like 150 athletes. And then they have like 10 people, whatever, going head to head for a few days. It does seem like now you're going to have to like spend at least this first year preparing for something that you just don't have much idea about what it is.
Yeah, it's going to be the Wild West, man. We're going to see, from my understanding, again, I haven't been intentionally not reading too much, but I think that the sanctioned events are going to have pretty much entire control over their programming, from my understanding.
They will, yeah.
So, I mean, you could go to these events, man, and you could see the kind of programming you haven't seen. Like, they're going to try to do weird stuff, right? So you're going to be like, oh, box jumps, but your butt has to be facing the box, like backwards box. Like, you know what I mean? It could just be, like, you don't know. And so you can be going in one-arm barbell snatches. Who knows, right? Like, it could be, I don't know, like, and so it's going to be interesting. And I think the cool thing is a lot of these events, you know, regionals became pretty systematic in what you could expect. You know, there would be 15-foot rope climbs. There would be a lot of barbell. There would be burpees. There would be an airdyne, but you wouldn't see any outdoor running. And now you have these one-off events where it's like, hey, we happen to be next to a track and, you know, a staircase. So, you know, running stairs with sandbags and running 400 meters with Helen. And it's like, you can do this, you know, all sorts of cool stuff. Every event is going to have its own flavor. So it'll be interesting. You know, could be, if it's well covered, it's going to be very immersive and exciting for CrossFit fans if it's well covered, I think, which is exciting. But yeah, it's going to be nuts. Yeah, and you're right. You know, I don't really know exactly what events I'm going to yet. And then as soon as I do, it's going to be this, like, you know, trying to figure out what they're going to program, or when are they going to announce it, or, you know, where's the venue and what's close to that. And it's going to be, yeah. And all the more reason, like, all that kind of stuff I want to be prepared for as reasonably as possible. So that takes time. And, you know, it's the kind of stuff that I'll need to do, which will be nice to have that spare time now that I'm not working.
Yeah. With the games this year, obviously it wasn't the finish you were hoping for, I imagine. I don't think anyone shoots for fourth. But how do you feel about it now in retrospect?
Yeah. Yeah, it was very Canadian of me to come fourth. It seems like a Canadian thing to do. But, you know, right when it happened, I was very positive about it, like that day and that night, like the kind of thing I posted on social for anyone that read it. You know, I was happy for, you know, Lucas's accomplishments and happy to be in that position. There was a little bit of, I don't know if bitterness is the right word, but, you know, in the week or two after, I was just wasn't really, just frustrated that I was that close to getting on the podium. You know, it would have been nicer to have been third, obviously nicer to be second or first, but being that close and knowing that I was basically that close 2 years before that, and knowing I was, you know, a half a second away in a number of events in 2016 and 18 from calling myself a 3 times podiums finisher instead of the guy that came 4 second fourth, is just kind of a little frustrating. Right. But I just started focusing on, well, like, what can you control? And that's, you know, what you do this year. And it's definitely, you know, one of the best things my old coach ever told me is, he's like, you know, I know I've learned from experience. I always learn more from failure. It doesn't mean I'd always rather win. He's like, I would much rather win everything. Yeah. But I've always learned more from my failures. And I think I can say that about this. I mean, I'm a lot hungrier and more focused, and, you know, this is going to be a very good year for me. And I think about, well, how would you feel right now if you'd come third? And maybe I wouldn't be that focused and that determined, because I know I wasn't as focused and determined, admittedly, after I came second. Granted, I had my own wedding to prepare for, and, you know, we were moving, all these things were happening that were also super exciting right in the immediate future. And I just came off this big, you know, silver medal. So there was very much a lull in CrossFit in my life for a couple months. While still training, it wasn't the priority of every day. And that's definitely not the case this year. So you know, you have to be grateful that it taught you some things, and yeah, I'll be back better than ever. And it's cool to know that I feel like I have a very good likelihood of, you know, improving upon that finish, and I get to write the next chapter. And just like when I didn't make the games those 2 years in a row, that kind of added to my, let's call it my story, in a way that if I had made it and come, you know, whatever, 10th or something, it might not have been the same. And I might never have come second if I hadn't have lost. And so maybe, hopefully this will be one of those things I'm able to say that this and, you know, almost not making regionals were two things that, you know, got me that gold medal at the games one day. And I can say, yeah, if I hadn't come fourth that year, I probably never would have learned what I needed to do to get first. So not too worried about it.
When you were progressing through the weekend, did you feel mentally like you were in the position to come second or win? Or did it just not feel the same in your head? Like, did you have more self-doubt during that, during the 2018 games compared to the year before?
No, it was, you know, it was really good. The whole event went well. I wasn't super aware of the leaderboard. I knew that, I think it was after day one, I didn't look at the leaderboard, but I knew I was sort of in the top 8 or whatever. And just by how other athletes were looking and how they did in certain events, just kind of, based on feel, I was like, okay, like I'm in the running here. I've got a very good shot at being on the podium again. I hope that's first, but I was pretty confident I could be in that top 3 again after the first day, just kind of seeing how other guys were feeling and, how I was feeling, and, a few events that had started to get announced. Yeah. I mean, and then it just went well. And got to a point, I think it was Sunday morning, where I think I looked at the leaderboard, and it was kind of the same thing that happened the year before, where I was like, well, Matt Fraser's out of reach again, but I'm very much Sunday morning in the running for second or third. And that was definitely the case. And then, the running sled pull workout went really well. Then the last 2 events were announced. I'm like, sweet, I love these events. And then the handstand walk just didn't go well. It could have, I think I had the potential for it to go a lot better. And then I finished and I was like, oh crap, like I really butchered that. It was like I'd climb up the thing and I'd miss time it one way, and then I'd fix that error and I'd make a different error. And I just kept making little errors. And before I knew it, I barely finished under the time cap and came, 30th or something. And I'm like, well, that wasn't good. And I reset and I crushed the last event, and it was fine, but it was, as a whole, man, there wasn't a lot that I really look back on negatively. I think there was a few things more in the year as a whole. I didn't make a lot of massive mistakes throughout the weekend. A few things went wrong, but I think I'd said this to someone, I still haven't got the right words, but I said it to someone it was kind of a booby-trapped CrossFit Games. There were a lot of things that could go wrong. And I think for most athletes, if you ask them that have been there for multiple years, okay, list the things, if you had a time machine, you go back and change in 2016, 17, 15, whatever, and 18. I think everyone's list in 18 was pretty long. So even though I have a fairly long list of little things that, I wish I hadn't fallen with the dummy, or I missed that pegboard, or the whatever it was, I think everyone had a long list. So even though I could go back and say, well, if I hadn't mistimed the rope swing, and then I would have got those 10 points and I would have beat Hogberg. But you ask Hogberg, he probably has a dozen things too, so then he could change one. So, we were just as fit. And it's the same with Fraser. I mean, Fraser made probably more mistakes this year than he did most years. But I think it was just the nature of the programming. It had nothing to do with, it was just, that's like you play basketball. You don't make every shot, but sometimes the programming is a lot simpler. So there's less likelihood you're going to make big errors. When it's just classic couplets and triplets, you just go hard. But there's a lot more. There's an obstacle course. There's a dummy. There was, chaos, right? Everyone made a mistake or two in chaos.
So the first sanctioned event's coming up. It's actually in progress at the moment. Dubai. Why have you kept your name off the leaderboard?
For me, it's just a little too early in the year. By the time, I took a little bit of time off after the games, started back into training, and, sort of became apparent that Dubai was the first event. It was like, man, I just don't think I'm going to be 100% ready for basically another CrossFit Games in December, mentally or physically. And then honestly, another big factor is I've never been to the Dubai Fitness Challenge. And I know that a lot of other top guys that are going, like Fraser and Noah, Travis Mayer, Bjorgvin, whoever else is going, I haven't really looked. But I just know that they've been there for some of them 3 years. And so just that familiarity with that, it's a weird place, right? It's a different place.
Definitely.
And, they'd have familiarity. They'd have been in the hotels before, and they've probably been in the same venue. And I'm just like, you know what? If it was in my backyard, I'd probably do it. If it was in Vancouver, I might go. Yeah. But it's on the other side of the world in a weird place that other people are familiar with, and I am not. So, I just said, I'll go to one of the other 15 and get my year started in 2019.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating because it's almost like now you're like, well, I'm more of a cold weather athlete. Like, I'm going to go to this competition. Like, I'm not going to 40-degree Dubai. And other dudes like, I got a mad tan. Like, I'm black. Like, I'll hit up the Dubai desert run. It's really like you're pick and choosing, what you like.
Yeah. What suits your time.
Yeah.
All those other things.
Yeah. Obviously, if possible, I'm going to kind of wait and see how things unfold, but I'm going to try to go to an event that has a pool or an ocean.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right. If if there's 6 events, let's say at an event, and you know one of them you're going in the water and getting wet, that's like, I mean, almost a guaranteed win or a top finish for me. And then you assume that one other event will be more aerobic or a chipper or something. So and it's like, man, I'm pretty tough to knock off the top of a leaderboard if I've got 2 event wins or 2 like, really top finishes. And then I'm also still just very good at CrossFit. So, it's like there could just be one other event in there that's, let's say, a heavy snatch, which I'm good at. And then it's just like, well, I'm pretty hard to knock off the top spot at that point. Whereas if you go to an event that is just very regional-esque, then you're like, well, there'll probably be a chipper, and then the other 5 is anyone's guess. So, that sort of stuff, everyone's going to be doing that, right? I mean, if you're a guy that loves a heavy barbell, you're just going to look back at, events that who's running them, who's programming them, where they are. And it's like, oh, that's sponsored by, I don't know, Alico. It's like, there's probably going to be one at Max, like something like that.
Yeah. I think that if you're looking from like a objective data standpoint, those are important factors. But also, if you can get away with a 1.5 day event versus a 3-day slog, like that's only going to be more beneficial to the actual. If you need to go again, right? Well, if you need to go again in a month,
that's going to be interesting too, right? If depending on and that's the thing with the buy too, is that like it's basically the CrossFit Games as far as programming. I think there's 15 scored events last year or more, 4 days. There's a full like trail run in the sand with a vest, like it was everything, like bike ride, which is awesome. And so that kind of it's kind of unfortunate. That kind of programming favors me, but it also beats you up more. So
crushes you. Guys were obliterated
Oh
by
my
the end of the weekend. Yeah, we were watching them walking around.
Only financial measures could literally pull them back out onto the athlete floor.
Yeah, they were like, all right, last event, $6,000 for the winner. And they're like, all right, fuck, I'll go for it.
Were you guys there?
Yeah, we filmed like all the behind the scenes for it. So we were like the Savan of Dubai, which we plan on doing again.
Yeah, why not? Do it.
Yeah.
We're more
want to see it now.
The best buffets at the sanctioned event. That's really that's how we pick and choose.
Yeah. Is there going to be a sanctioned event in Australia?
There is. Yeah. It hasn't been officially announced yet, but Torian is not that event. That's what we know.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
They got the offer, but I think they were like, hey, you're probably going to need something bigger. And they were like, no, we're not interested. So I think they scrapped it. So you're planning on going to China for the sanctioned event?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
What made you choose that?
Well, I heard some rumblings that there'd be an event in China, and I was excited because my wife has family there. So her uncle married someone who lived in China, and they've been living there, and we haven't got to visit them yet. And so we've obviously met them in Australia, and we've kind of been wanting a reason to go. We were thinking of maybe going like next fall just to like visit them and, do some tourist stuff or something. And so where I live in Canada, it's actually like kind of close. So, you jump on a short flight to Vancouver, like 30 minutes, and then you just do a direct flight to, let's say Shanghai. I think it's 9 hours or 10 hours. I'm not answering that. Yeah. And so, so, it's just like, it's quite a quick flight. Whereas if I say, people are like, oh, why don't you go to Miami? I'm like, I have to make like 2 or 3 stops, and it takes longer or just as long in airports. Time zone's a little better. It's 3 hours instead of 7, but it's actually a pretty good location for me to go to. And, just an opportunity to travel, and I just figured, why not? It's closer than Europe. And so I'm definitely planning on going to China, and then potentially somewhere in the States. I'm assuming there's going to be more. I think there's been 2 or 3 announced there, but I've heard some rumblings of a bunch of other ones. So, if let's say the China one is late in the year, if it's early and I don't win, then I'll probably go to some in the States because they're close. And who knows, man? I mean, all I know for now is just kind of putting some chips on China and then just waiting to see what else happens. Trying not to think about it too much, just focusing on training and, making sure my bags are packed when they need to be packed.
Yeah. And have you completely retired from the Open?
Well, I sure hope so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you I mean, you guys have done the Open, especially if you're doing the Open for the purpose of qualifying. It's so stressful, man. And it's so long. It's 5 weeks, and you're redoing workouts, and you're like, you try not to leaderboard, but you have to. I don't know. And I mean, I don't know. So I get the feeling that they're going to make it. They're going to incentivize us to do the Open, right? In some way, shape, or form, which is fine. And so I'll do it. Like I'll be ready for sure, and I'm going to be a hell of a lot better when the Open rolls around this year than it did last time. If I don't have to do it, I'm not doing it. But like anything, really. But if I don't have to do a really hard workout, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah,
100%. But I mean, like, do you know any, let's say, athletes that have been to the games or regionals that like doing the Open? Like, be honest, can you think of any?
No, it's all the ones that actually don't go to the CrossFit games, but can like smash the Open.
Yeah. It's like their glory moment.
Yeah, it's the glory.
When all the eyes are on them and they're like, they come last at regionals, but it's like, yeah, bro, but I almost won the Open in my region. It's like, well, no one actually gives a fuck about that.
Show me the video and then we'll talk.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying everyone that beats me in the Open cheated. I'm definitely not saying that. I'm saying you're probably shorter than me.
You're almost definitely shorter.
Yeah. No, I mean, and the tough thing with the Open is it's just a numbers game where, when you're at a competition with 40 men, the worst you can come is 40th, where if you're in the Open in the world and you have a workout that's like not up your alley, it's like you can come to 200,000th. Like it's just like the every second is so much more nitpicked. And then when you're doing these at your gyms, it's just the Open. The Open is the Open, man. I mean, there's been articles written on it for years about the Open and how whatever. So I'm going to do it, and I'll be a hell of a lot fitter this year, and I think I can do really well at it. But realistically, someone with my proportions, I mean, if it's a really sprinty, fast range of motion type event, and there's hundreds of men around the world that are 5'6" that do CrossFit fast, it's tough slugging for me to have a really competitive finish. Whereas typically at regionals, one event like that with tougher judges, I might still pull out like a 15th out of 40 men in a workout I have no business doing well in, and then the rest I can win. So, whereas in the Open, I might come like 400th in the world and work out with thrusters, burpees, and more burpees. So we'll see. I'm kind of looking forward to redeeming myself, to be honest, because this last year's Open was pretty abysmal. So yeah, I'll do it if I have to, but hopefully I don't have to, and hopefully I can just, I would love it if, we actually had to go around and compete like on a freaking circuit. And like, I just got like, I had to go every 5 weeks and do a competition for like 5 comps. It'd be freaking sweet. Like I sometimes forget how much I love competing until I get to go again. I'm like, oh yeah, this is like a lot of fun. I mean, I don't know if when you guys were young, depending on the sports you played, I assumed you guys played sports. You weren't just gym rats, right?
I've been doing the podcast since I was 3, so.
Nothing wrong with gym rats. Anyway, I used to play volleyball all the time. Yeah, I used to play volleyball, and we just compete all the time, and you get to, win and lose, and it's just like competing's fun, and so training's great too. But yeah, so that's the best part about this. All these new changes is, I'm going to be traveling around the world and lacing up the nanos and trying to kick ass.
Nice. Yeah, I'd say there's that one hidden benefit of not having a set schedule, or creating your own schedule, is that, if an opportunity comes up, you can just drop everything and go, which is obviously something you plan on doing and suits better, right, to the new season with all these random sanction events and kind of not a lot of structure at the moment. It's like much harder to plan out your year. At least before, you could be like, all right, so I got regionals coming up, so like work, I need this time off, and like Opens here, so like work, I need, maybe part-time or less stress around this, and you can plan when your projects get done. But now it's like, it's kind of perfect timing, really. You've got your own schedule that you can make and nowhere to be necessarily.
Well, it's only really one event on the year now that you have to be at.
The game.
The CrossFit Games.
Yeah. But you can qualify for that at any point. And so then
Matt Fraser's got like a 10-month off-season coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. You can just work on
yeah.
He's just gone on holidays. I don't know what that dude does.
He doesn't really work on anything. He just needs to maybe trim his body hair and get a better sunglass sponsorship.
I don't know. Maybe like a bigger smile when he wins.
Yeah. Yeah, he's pretty.
He's moderately dissatisfied with
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I honestly, I feel for Vellner, like who's a student, right? And he's just been able to make it work these last, well, I mean, by just been able to make it work, he's been on the podium 3 times. But he's, he's doing very well for himself, but he's been busy, right? With balancing his university life and life of, the Patrick Vellner we all know and love on TV. And, that's going to be increasingly difficult for someone like him to try and make these competitions work while still balancing, life as a student. So he'll figure it out, but it's not, the season schedule, like you said, is definitely starting to favor more of the full-time athlete, and hopefully it can financially make sense, for athletes that are, at my level or even a bit below my level to try and make like a bit of a competitive season. Just like semi-professional golfers in the States can still make like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And like, I don't know who they are. Like they're not on TV, but they're still like making money on these like B-level tours. And so in an ideal situation, there can start to be an ecosystem where athletes that are like doing well at sanctioned events, but maybe not winning them yet, are able to make that travel, financially feasible. So, and live that kind of athlete lifestyle without maybe having to be like the number one guy in the sport, like Fraser or me, who's number whatever 4. So
Yeah.
We'll see.
Obviously, without giving too much away, you and Fraser obviously clearly can make a living being a full-time professional athlete with all the different aspects that are involved. How many athletes do you know that could, maybe they don't, but could be full-time professional, just along the lines of this sort of topic?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like a lot of things, people are fairly tight-lipped about, like how much they might be or might not be making from sponsors. It's just, it's like, I mean, even with like my job, like I don't talk about how much I make to other people, right? And so it's kind of the same at the CrossFit Games. Like, there's not a lot of conversations that go on. So I mean, like I have a manager who helps me, negotiate or whatever, and I just am kind of like, is this a good deal? And he's like, yeah, that's good. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, is that too much or not enough? And he's like, it's not enough for him. Okay, then yeah, go for that. Because it's just like I don't know. But yeah, so it's hard to say. I mean, yeah, there's a handful. Really, it's kind of the names you'd be familiar with, right?
Yeah.
It's the people that have been at the top of the sport or have done well and, for numerous years that, they can, make a living off of, obviously there's the prize money, which is public, and then you make a bit of money from a few of the sponsors, and it kind of adds up to make, a paycheck basically. And then obviously a lot of them have side things, whether that was me with my job, and then people have their gyms, which create some residual income. I think a lot of the top athletes in the States probably don't coach a lot of the classes. They might be at the gym, help run the business, but they're not coaching 5 classes a day. But yeah, it's not, I mean, I'd love it to be more, right? I'd love it to the sport to grow to a point where there's more and more athletes that can support themselves, because I think that's how the athletes get better, is if they can do what I'm doing now, which is focus on training. And then, more athletes can do that, then the competition gets better and it's better to watch, and they're more professional, it's faster, and then it just grows for everyone. And then, brands get to grow around the athletes grow around the brands, then the brands can put more money into competitions get cooler, they're better fan experiences, so more fans want to come, they're better on TV because, it's just, it all adds up.
Yeah, I think there's so much more opportunity. So I was going to say for the athletes, just because like from a brand's perspective, it sucked before because you would only see your athlete like once or twice a year at an absolute maximum. And then CrossFit controlled all the media, and they would just show the same 3 or 4 people every single time, and like purposely leave out, other brands, people sponsored by other brands. Whereas now potentially, your athletes are going to be all over the shop. Like they can wear whatever clothes they want to wear at like 9 different events.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I would love to see is, I mean, ideally, let's say, Jim is going to some couple sanctioned events, and he's got this, up and coming clothing brand that wants to sponsor them. They're like, hey, we're going to get, a photographer there, a videographer there. We're going to tell your story the whole weekend, crush it for us. He's like fired up about it, and they help, cover his bills for a couple months. He trains like a mad dog, and he goes there and he does well. Like maybe he doesn't win, but, there becomes this like following around what he's up to because of all this great content that's coming out around his experiences at these sanctioned events and how close he came and he won that one event. How cool was that snatch he did? Blah, blah, blah. He almost beat, that really good guy who can't beat Brent Fikowski. He's really strong. But then, then the brand, then all of a sudden people want to buy these t-shirts that this, this company created around this athlete. And then, then the next year there's hype around him. There's hype around the brand. And then there's obviously hype around CrossFit. People are more invested. So like that kind of, those sort of like that didn't exist last year, right? Because that athlete would realistically, maybe go to like something, in your case, the Torian Pro or, Wadapalooza or something. He'd do okay. They might try and film that, but also like no one really cared about, like outside of people in Australia or even people in Brisbane, like no one cares about who won the Torian Pro. I'm sorry, Royce, if you listen to this, but in the same way, like, who came, like name the people on the podium at Wadapalooza this year, right? I know who they are because I know what's going on with this stuff, but most people can't. And that's like the biggest event in the world, really, outside maybe that in Dubai. So it's like now there's a reason to kind of like keep tabs as a whole on these sanctioned events. And then hopefully, those stories can be told. And there's a lot of stories that happened this year at regionals that weren't told because, well, the media team doesn't exist, but because there's only, as many film people as there were they were still there to tell like the main stories, whether that was, let's say, me and
Shane Orr,
whoever the top, yeah,
the top athletes, Brent, Shane Orr, Matt.
Yeah. Just me and me. No. But yeah, so I like to, I think that optimistically this new system can be better for everyone, but that's left to be seen. And whether that's, I just hope people, brands and athletes and everyone can kind of like adapt to it, and hopefully the sanctioned events can put on that's the biggest thing I'm worried about, honestly, is just the sanctioned events being up to the caliber of regionals. Because regionals were freaking tight shit, man. Like those things were run like a fine-tuned machine, and people complained about whatever, programming and judging and stuff, but it was actually pretty good. You only realize how good it is, or how great it was when you go to watch another event and you go, oh man, like we want Dave Castro back. And like Dave programmed some good, I've been kind of looking at some other programmed events around here and or just in the States and stuff to kind of see like, oh, like what could we expect? And I'm like, holy smokes. Like Dave, like, yeah. Call me. Yeah. We need to get you on board for these, because some of them are just, I've seen events with like, ab mat sit-ups, and like, I'm like, oh gosh, it's not, you shouldn't have those, or just events that, I don't know. Anyway, that's a whole different story. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of cool opportunities in this new system. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it works out.
The reason it was good is the same reason it got cut. He just had unlimited resources. He could test everything. He had the perfect grid, the stadiums, the timing, the setups, the equipment. And that's all the reasons that Glassman cut it. It's because it was just way too expensive, and he was just pouring way too many resources in it for ultimately what he didn't really care about in the end. He didn't really care about the games. Glassman cares about people that drink too much soda, having type 7 diabetes, being, BMI 400. He wants to help that person, Yeah,
I get it. And yeah. And hopefully the sport can continue to grow while all that good stuff's happening as well. I think
if he puts his focus back into what earns him the most money, then in the future it'll just give him more. Even if he's giving the same percentage of the revenue over to the sport, it's a bigger pie. It's a bigger dollar amount. So it's only going to benefit you guys, which I think in the end it'll work out.
Speaking of soda, I got a Zevia here.
Part of the problem. Well, yeah.
No, hey, 0 calories, man.
0 calorie, bro. True. 0 calorie, but it's going to come out later. They're going to do some study where it's like, the liver converts it into calories because there's no such thing as 0 calories.
That's why I couldn't come first.
That's why.
I was drinking like 5 or 6 a day in Miami, and I was thinking to myself, nah, there's definitely calories in here. There has to be. It has to be. It's just not possible.
No, man, there's none.
Delicious.
It's good, right?
It's delicious. So you made a big announcement, Brent. You moved from Raw to Brute, and I was looking through the comments that you put up on your Instagram today. And a lot of people want to know about it. So, yeah, let's dig into it. So obviously, Big Bad Bobby D, big Australian programming legend, also very fit. Also taking you to all your CrossFit regionals and your CrossFit Games finishes. But now you've moved over to Brute with Mike, who we've had on the show, and some other coaches as well, Nick Fowler. Tell us about how you came to this decision.
Yeah, not easily. Basically, sort of at the end of the CrossFit Games ended, and like I'd kind of spoken about with after coming fourth, I just sort of, kind of looked at a bunch of things, like looked at a whole heap of things from a bunch of different angles, where we were living, obviously my job, and just everything. And obviously one thing that came up was coaching, and I'd honestly, I'd never planned to ever really leave Rob, because I just loved what we were doing together. And like I said in my little Instagram blurb there, like Rob is the single greatest one source of, strength and fitness information that I've ever met and probably will ever meet. Dude just knows it all. He's done it all. He's had almost every injury, so he knows how to recover from every injury. And yeah, and he's been in the sport of CrossFit for ages. And I think even before CrossFit was around, he was kind of doing, CrossFit. He was strong and he was conditioned. So, yeah, like I never really saw a need to go anywhere else. And then I just started thinking like, well, what if I did? And I think the thing that sort of came to my mind was I looked back at my experience in volleyball and swimming, and I had some great coaches in volleyball and swimming. And then usually the next year I'd have another great coach, and they weren't always better each year, but they were always different. And I would always learn something different from each coach. And even though maybe the previous coach knew that thing, maybe it wasn't the focus, or they weren't able to display it in the same way. And I started thinking about that, and I'm like, I've been with Rob for 4 years, and we've done just like everything that we set out to do. Wasn't even, and I believe that, and that's kind of the thing. I mean, regardless of how this year goes, it's not going to be because of Brute or not because of Rob. You know what I mean? It's just going to be because that's how the year goes. And I know a lot of the stuff that I'm starting to do now with Brute is the stuff that Rob and me were going to do anyway. We were going to spend a little more time conditioning. We were going to spend a little more time on gymnastic skills, which is what I've been spending my time on now. But yeah, the big part was just the change, the opportunity to have some fresh blood in the mix, for them to have that excitement to coach me, for me to have the excitement to prove myself to them. The communication was never really an issue with Rob, but, there were times where obviously he's in Australia and I'm in Canada, other ends of the world. And so, during certain times of the year, it was hard to get like constant feedback, just due to the time change. So it was just delayed that extra day or two. So was looking, the exciting part here is some of them are based in Texas, and some are based in Salt Lake, the guys with Brute. And so like, I'm going to go and probably train with them and, get some hands-on stuff with them in the coming weeks and months, so that we can, hone in on some specific technical stuff. And so basically when I first started looking into maybe getting a different coach, the first thing I thought about was, I was like, I should get like a team. And so I had a bunch of people in Kelowna. I had a powerlifter, Olympic weightlifter, long distance runner, sprinting coach. Hadn't found a gymnastics coach yet, but I had these 4 people that I'd all worked with on varying degrees. And I was like, hey, maybe I'll get all these people to sort of synthesize a message, through me, and I'll organize it, or maybe through Rob and he'll organize it. And then, he'll give me like a cohesive program based on all their feedback, and I'll train with them. And I sort of started to try to figure out what that might look like, and, write down some notes. And then Brute was one of the people I talked to, and they'd sort of been doing that for 2 years. And they already had a language and a system set up so that, that sort of information could be flowed through one central source and kind of seem like a cohesive thing. But it was all the little pieces were coming from these individualized coaches that had experience working with CrossFitters and working through in this same system. And so I was like, well, that's kind of what I'm looking for. And, I wanted it to in some ways I was planning it to flow through myself and keep Rob in that picture in a big way. But just the simplicity of what they sort of had to offer there. And from what I heard from, I talked to some people like Mitch Barnard, who'd had a really good experience over the past 6 months or so, 7 months working with them. And, the amount of feedback he had from them and just like the relationship he was able to gain with them just seemed really positive. So, I started working with them for a bit, and obviously, I've been working with them for a couple of weeks now before I made it, Facebook official. But yeah, and that was kind of it. And then, I've been talking with Rob quite a bit, and we're still going to work on some stuff together that we're planning on. Cause, and a part of the thing too is someone commented on my post something about like, oh, you always remember your high school drama coach, but eventually you got to move on to Hollywood. And I'm like, Rob's not exactly a high school drama coach. He's capable, he got me from a level 2 to 4, let's say. And like Rob can take a guy from a 4 to a 5. You know what I mean? He can take a guy from a 1 to a 2, from an 0 to a 1. Like if you don't have a muscle up, he can get you your muscle up. If you have 10, he can get you 20. Now that I have 20, he can get me to 25. It's more just, a different professional coach, a different perspective, yeah. So it's hard because like there was nothing structurally wrong. Like it was a breakup, but it wasn't because like, she got fat. It was just like moving on. that was too far. But it's like there wasn't it wasn't like I could leave him with like some parting, if only you'd done this. It's like, no, everything was fine. And we would have had another good year this year. I have no doubt of that. And there's no way to say if it's going to be better or worse with these guys, but it was just kind of an opportunity to have some fresh blood in the mix. And I mean, in a lot of other sports, people change coaches all the time, right? So it was just kind of an opportunity for me to do that. And so far it's been going well. And yeah, that's really about all there is to say. Any questions?
Any questions? I mean, we've had Nick on twice, Nick Fowler, and he's a quiet genius, and like if you could have gone with anyone, we hold Brood up there as one of the, along with Training Think Tank, is one of the best programs that you'll ever have access to in terms of if you're competing in the sport of CrossFit. It's basically you're going to get a similar result. It's not going to vary too much. It's just kind of like who you feel you connect with better, right? But ultimately, they all have amazing training and support and whatever else you need. It's just kind of like who you gel with, because at the end of the day, I can't remember where I heard it, but it was like you want to be accountable to someone that you don't want to let down. And so if you felt like you want to let down this person more than another person, you should go with that person, the person that maybe you respect more or that you just hold more highly for whatever reason, because you're going to be more accountable to that person. And if that's Brute, that's Brute. If it's, whoever else, whatever else program, it's whatever else program. So it's all really high quality these days.
Yeah. That's it. And like, that's the thing. I mean, a lot of the stuff I'm doing now is very similar to what, in a lot of ways to what Rob and I were doing around this time last year, probably what we would be doing now. So it's not like, it's not like all of a sudden we're reinventing the wheel. We're doing what worked for me last year to get me, fit again, but just slightly different perspectives. And, instead of 5x5, it's 6x4. So like big differences.
I knew it. Such a big difference.
Damn it! That's been it the whole time. Yeah, but it's been fun, and like I like working with them, and it'll be cool to train with a group down in the US. And it's really there's not like a lot to it, and I mean, I still would recommend Rob to anyone at any level to get to the next level, really. So it's just sometimes you got to mix it up,
Yeah. And do you actually have a coach now? It's the one thing I didn't really understand about Brute. Is it like, is Nick your coach, or is like Cashew the guy that puts it together?
It's kind of like, have you seen the Rick and Morty episode with Unity where they're all just like the same? Like, we are Brute. Like when they get on the phone, they just say, we are Brute. And like, whenever I ask them, who am I talking to again? They just like repeat, we are Brute. And there's like this echo. And I mostly, I mostly communicate with Nick Fowler.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. That's my coach, I guess. But
awesome. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, well, I guess there's not too much more to say about it, except, I mean, we'll wait to see what the results are in China. Probably there's the advantage as well of having relatively local guys to train with, like Hepner and I don't know whoever else is on it in the States, you know, to kind of throw down against. Are you training with people much, or is it still mostly 95% solo training throughout the week?
Yeah, it's mostly solo training. That's how I prefer it. I'm interested to go. I do plan to go to Salt Lake, and they have like a bit of a crew there. Like Mitch will be there, and Sanchez, and a few other like team athletes. I have not trained with a lot of people at my caliber often. There's one guy here that's been to regional multiple times. We train together every like 2 weeks. Terrence Limbert, he's fit, super strong, and moves well. So like it's nice to train with him because he's observant. He's a coach as well, and so you know, like he'll comment on like technical stuff, and we'll like learn with each other. And then honestly, most of the other time around here, if I'm training with people, it's sometimes the information flow isn't as back and forth, you know, like it's fun to train with people in the gym, to have company, and sometimes they'll do something different. But, you know, my level of attention to detail and my level of fitness is usually a little above a lot of the people I end up training with. So there's not as much of a back and forth. I usually end up providing more information or more fitness to the equation than
I usually end up with information and fitness. It's an absolute ration every time. One time I slaughtered 56 members of the gym
with my fitness and my boring attention to detail.
Yeah, technical cues. He just writes the what up on the board, and he just destroys their minds with his breakdown. And then they're going so defeated. And
most of them don't even start the workout. They can't understand the breakdown.
See people just pulling their knee sleeves down and untying their shoes and shit. But yeah, that's at least 16 down. I've only got 12 to go. We're going to start with an air bike sprint, and they're dropping like flies. Yeah. They're like, hey,
it'll be interesting going down there.
Should stay there. Stay home.
Yeah.
Stay home.
And now, literally now that I'm training more, it's becoming, you know, like it's nice to train alone when I have to train more, or else the sessions just get dragged out. I mean, you know, I'll have a big session that, you know, if I'm really diligent, it takes, let's say 2.5 hours of just like sets and reps and sets and reps and little workout sets and reps. It's like, geez, I don't want to drag that out to 3 hours 15. Like, I want to go home. Like, I like training, but it's like, let's get this done. And so if I'm with people, that gets dragged out, and all of a sudden you're adding hours and hours onto the gym. It's like, I should be eating. I should be, you know, let's stay quick and efficient here, and, you know, get the fitness in. Yeah. So we'll see. It'd be interesting to train with some top quality people and just, I don't know, see how that goes.
Did you have to change anything this year with your nutrition because you're training more now? I know you're eating an absurd amount of food already. Surely it can't go up from there.
Yeah. So since I've been training more the last like couple of weeks here, eating more. So just, you know, more oats in the morning, and then a bit of just like powdered carbohydrate during some of the sessions, and then just bigger meals, which have been a little hard sometimes to stomach in between.
So much food?
Yes.
Yeah. Especially because you're a big guy. So obviously you're fueling at a base level way more food than just the guy who's, you know, 74 kilos.
Yeah.
That's probably a good lead. No, sorry, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, there is more food that needs to be consumed for sure. Yeah, there's times when it's not great, especially like just before the games and at the games. It's like that's hard, you know. Like definitely the couple weeks after the games, I undereat a little bit just because I'm just kind of over the whole like chewing, swallowing aspect of that part of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, just the amount of jaw work. So that's probably a good segue. You've started this thing called the Professor Project. For any people who are confused, it's not a collaboration between us and you. Although I don't know what that would look like. It'd probably look like some kind of stand-up comedy event or some shit, where it'd just be like,
oh man,
for a night of laughs about competitive
on the Professor Project,
making fun of competitive exercise. Would probably be what we'd be good at. But no, it's not. What is the Professor Project, Brent? Tell us about it.
So the Professor Project is something I have created. It is online. I need to tighten up this elevator pitch. So if you're listening to the podcast by now, I'm assuming you're going to finish it. So hold on to your butts. But basically, it's an online resource right now. That's basically, I'm trying to put everything in there that I know. It's basically the best way to put it. So I'm trying to give you insights into how to prepare for competitions, very in-depth technical cues on every movement in the CrossFit library, not just like the quick minute 30, don't forget to, bend over from the hips, and then it's over. It's like I have a video that's, I think it's like 25 minutes on rope climbs, and the pinches and the sequence of events and where you place your hands and how close to your hands your feet should go, and some drills you can do to learn. So there's like all these movement cues. I've got this long video on competition prep. So everything I do leading up to a competition to prep, and I give like 6 different documents showing my actual documents I used at regionals to prepare, then templates for you to use. So there's like these sort of templates where, you write down the event name, you write down the time it is, what your warm-up's going to be, what clothing you're going to wear, what your strategy is, what your cool down's going to be, anything else you need, and just kind of going through all those things with you. And then there's obviously like a online community aspect with a private sort of Facebook and Instagram group where we get to share videos and talk. And so I'm on there communicating with the members if they have some questions and stuff. I'm keeping in touch with them, and we have like, monthly challenges as well. So we'll kind of have like a challenge, like, last month was, 5 rope climbs for time. And then we like release the video content, and then we see people improve and, learn from that. And then I critique a few of the content videos that people submitted. I'm like, hey, make sure you watch my video, and you're doing everything right, except those 2 things I mentioned at the end of the video, you're missing that on your climb. So make sure you add that in, you personally. And then we have live question and answers. And what else are we doing in there? I'm trying to think of some other stuff we've done. Some mental stuff and pacing. So pacing stuff isn't up yet, but I'm really excited about that. So we're going to have this sort of week by week sort of potentially take home homework on how to get people to pace better, because it's just systemic in CrossFit. It's just terrible. People just go out too fast, and they don't know how to pace. And so I've been working on sort of this template on, how to teach people, because for me, it's somewhat come naturally, but there's a way to break down why it comes naturally to me. And there's just basically this feeling of knowing when you're about to go too far into the pain cave or the red line, you can't come back. Right. So it's teaching people to find that line through a variety of different tests, and then apply that to a brand new test that you've never done before. And so there's some ways I'm going to do that. And then the other thing I'm excited about too is people have been asking about, like, you're the professor, you're mindful, you're patient, you're methodical, you seem pretty calm. Like, how do you adopt that mindset? And so there's going to be some mindset kind of lessons in there, sort of take home stuff. But then there's also this section called story time, which is people are really enjoying so far. And I recall a story like I have with you guys about the games and what I've learned from it, whether that's, experience failure, experiencing success, or overcoming an obstacle, or, worrying about what other people are doing. And then like what I did to get past that, to be better. And so then hopefully people can relate that to their own lives. So it's a bunch of stuff. So basically there's free content on an email list and on Instagram right now. And then with the goal that if you're liking the free content, you want more, then you'll sign up for the premium, which is $20 a month. And then you get access to like a ridiculous amount of content that's updated every like 4 days with more videos. So.
No, that sounds good.
Boom.
Have you caught any like other top athletes getting accounts on free with like fake account names just to get in there and see what you're doing?
Matt
Fraser. Matt Fraser ass.
Nat Fraser.
That was one of the potential reasons I didn't want to do this. I was like, I don't want to give away all my secrets, but I mean, I would freaking love it if someone was able to beat me and be like, I did everything you told me to do. Like, hey man, like, props. Like, freaking, I don't know what to say, but I'm proud of you, brother. Like, keep signing up. Like, that'd be great. And I mean, if that ever happens, then my bad. But it has been cool seeing people improve, and I think it's there's this I'm trying to think of a quote, but I'm going to be working hard, right? And so it's like I've got to remember, like, even if someone's working as smart as me, And as hard as me, I'm already ahead of them. So hopefully I can stay ahead of them.
Yeah. It's like you're going to get to as good as I am now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully, but I don't know. I'd love to see some, right now we have mostly like beginner and intermediate people, or at least they're the ones that are communicating the most. There might be some people there that are, at a regional level that are soaking in some of this information. And I think a lot of it, I think, we're starting to create more content for beginners because that's a content, a group of people that are seemingly more and more interested in it. Intentionally, it was going to be more for sort of intermediate athletes that maybe had been going for like a year or so, that kind of had most of the stuff under their belt. And they're like, well, like I'm not getting enough maybe from my coach or my gym. And like, I want to know what else is out there. It's this new sport. And they have this information overload from YouTube. Like what video do I watch on how to stretch? Like there's just too many. And then they can come here and there's like a curated source of like professional content from someone who's been doing really well. But we are starting to create more and more content around more of the beginners as well, because we're finding that, not everyone can do a lot of rope climbs fast. They need to get from 0 to 1. So we're creating more of that too.
Well, then you better have a Spanish or a Portuguese subtitles or translator, because most of the beginners are in South America right now. That's your big market right there. Brazil, most open sign-ups. So
yeah, man, it's wild down there. Portuguese, that's the new language of CrossFit, I think. But yeah, if you're listening and you haven't wanted me to shut up about my plug here, I'm not going to get all George Foreman on you. I'll tell you a story about that in a second. But go to theprofessorproject.com and you can sign up for the email list. So that's cool. But there's a story about George Foreman was a boxer. Someone told me this story. So George Foreman was a boxer, and then they made the George Foreman grill around him, and he made like $5 off every grill. So the dude was raking in cash off this just kind of like a gimmicky product. Anyway, so he like comes out of retirement for a fight, and it's like before the fight, and they go, George Foreman, you're really excited about your comeback fight. Can you tell us a little bit about your fight preparation? And he goes, the George Foreman grill is great. It's got a 5-function setting. And he just starts spewing all this information on the George Foreman grill. And the lady's like, we want to know about the fight. He's like, hey, ma'am, I'm just here to sell some grills. So I'm hopefully I'm not going too George Foreman on you here. But I want to find that content. I think that's freaking hilarious.
That's good.
Yeah, so theprofessorproject.com. Yeah, maybe someone made it up, but the person who told it to me seemed to be an honest folk. So.
That's solid. Yeah, it's also the Professor Project on Instagram as well.
That's right.
It's good. It's got some of the free content on there. Yeah, cool. Well, Brent, we normally wrap with the 4 questions, but I feel like we've done it a lot of times with you, so maybe we'll just keep it pretty short and leave it here. Probably the last thing I'll have to say is, obviously we're pretty excited for how the year's going. The CrossFit sanctioned event in China is relatively close, I think. Assuming you do qualify in China, obviously that changes things massively, right? You've done a very small amount of workouts to achieve the second most important goal of the whole year. How would you feel if you walk away from China with the W?
Sorry, all of a sudden you just started cutting out there, man. That's the quality was so good there until just then. Say that again. I'm sorry.
If you do walk away with the W in China, obviously it's gonna change things a lot. What do you think you will do if you do win the China event? Will you take some time off, or will it just be like all out in prep for the games?
That would be a problem I would love to have. It's so weird. We're so used to this, like you ramp up for regionals and then you just kind of keep ramping up for the next 6 weeks and then the games hits and then you're like, thank goodness. This season could turn into, especially next year, is you'll do the games and then you'll like do a mini ramp down and then you'll have to ramp up for the open because that's going to be in like October. You'll do the open, you'll be dead. And then like if you made the games and then do the open right after, you're going to be busted, man. Like I know for a fact there's some athletes that like just make it out of the games alive because you train so hard before the games that a lot of people train themselves into injury. So very few people come into the games healthy. Fun fact. Or not 100% healthy and some not healthy at all because they train too hard or they push through an injury thinking they have to. So then at the end of the games, they're just like, put me in a wheelchair and like soak me in Epsom salts for 3 months. And they're like freaking Daredevil in this like float tank for 3 months, just trying to recover, like Goku or something. Anyway, so it's going to be, and so I think what'll happen is people will do the open, and then they'll have to take like an off season, or hopefully they'll like say they do the open and they'll do like Dubai, and then they'll have like from Dubai until like April they won't do anything, and then they'll ramp up for the games. Like it'll be kind of opposite. So I don't really know, man. I'm just going to get fit or die trying, and then as soon as I qualify, probably take some time off, and and then presumably like do the open as well. And then like as soon as I have like my ticket, then it's just like, okay, from the moment of ticket until the games, you just make, a full like periodized plan towards that first day of the games. Which if that's like 6 months, then then there'll definitely be like a full on month of just kind of pissing around. But if it's 2 months, then it's like, okay, let's just, keep pushing. And it just depends on the amount of time. I mean, for a guy like Fraser, let's say he wins Dubai, and let's say there's no reason for him to do the open, or even if there is, I mean, that's even with the open, that's March 31st. So he has April, May, June, July. He's got 4.5 months or so. So I would assume that the first, 2 weeks after the open would be pretty low key.
Yeah.
Just to kind of be like, all right, we made it. Like, let's set up, let's put some things in order. Let's get mentally ready to, to push hard for like a solid, like gradual lead up for 4 months. It'll be weird. It'll be interesting. It'll be fun. I looked at your questions. I think the last time you had me, have you guys changed these questions, or has it been so long that I've forgotten them?
No, I think it's
been 2 years since you've been on, so.
Oh, it's been 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't do the.
It's been 2?
Yeah. Well, since I think you did post games.
About a year and a half.
Yeah, 2017. Yeah, true. Year and a half.
It's about a year and a half.
Oh, I can do question number 4. I got a cool quote.
All right, hit us.
And then that'll be it. All right. So this is a good one. I like it at least. So now I'm
From the Professor
like,
Project.
I'm gonna. Yeah, it's like, okay. Quote of the year is sign up for the Professor.
Brent Fikowski.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, I do have a good quote. That would be fun though. I should just rip off like the beginning of a movie quote, and you're like, oh, I know this quote, and then just sneak in an advert. All right. No man steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm a bit confused.
That's a good one.
But
No, because the river. Okay, so water's always changing, so it's moving. So
that's true.
Yeah, I mean, to name the same river, but the actual water that you put yourself in is different. Separate water molecules. Those have moved on to another part, and you've grown, you've aged or whatever. You've changed, so you're slightly different. So I don't know
and
what.
So for me, what it means to me is. Now that I've been in this sport now for I've been competing for 6 years, 6 regionals, rest in peace. And I say a little prayer every time now. Just look up and rest in peace. Rest in peace. Pour one out for my regional homies. I think
just pour it out.
Yeah, just pour it out on the gym floor every time someone makes regionals. I gotta make a video on that for Instagram. But for me, it means, I want to, so I'm going to compete again this year. And when I compete, I'm going to kind of remember that quote as I want to be like we talked about at the end of the games with Vellner and Bjorgvin. We're like, man, we got to beat Fraser. And it's not about Fraser, but it's like, I want to go to the next competition. And, for people to be like, oh, Brent usually doesn't do so well in that kind of event or this and that. I'll be like, well, it's not the same river and I'm not the same man. So let's see what happens. Like that kind of confidence that, I'm going to put in more and more intelligent work this year. And, even at the games this year, the squat clean, or not the squat clean, sorry, but the CrossFit total was announced, the 30 ring muscles were announced. And I was like, man, I'm sick of those events being announced and being like, well, damage control, let's try and come like, somewhere between 20th and 10th. It's like, man, I want to be able to look at an event probably the way that, someone like Tia does or Fraser and be like, sweet, another one I can win. And I realize that might not be the case for everything, just, because of my height, and I might never be able to get that good, but it's like, I want to get closer to that good where I can see an event and be like, yeah, you think I'm going to come 10th? Yeah. Okay. Well, not the same man, not the same river, see you on the floor. So that's kind of how I see that quote. And I think it's an opportunity for other people that get stuck in ruts of, who they are based on others people's expectations. I see that a lot with people like, I'm not that kind of guy. Like, I'd never go and talk to that girl, or I can't get that kind of job. It's like, screw that noise. Like, yeah, you can. Like, do it. Who cares? You're not the same guy you were in high school, right? It's been however many years. Like, go do your thing. So, yeah, quote of the day.
That's a good place to leave it. Everyone follows you to listen to this podcast, but they may not follow the Profess Project. So go follow that. That's something new to follow. And I guess we'll catch up again once you've destroyed every Asian in China, mentally and physically, with everything. So Brent, thanks for coming on and updating all of us. And I'm sure people grateful for the openness and the information as always.
Yeah, thanks. I plan to go on to my Instagram here because I doubt we answered anyone's questions from my
Instagram. We did actually better job.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, we answered them as we went. A lot of it was around your announcement and how things have changed.
Full-time athlete,
that sort of stuff.
Yeah, cool. Sweet, guys. That was fun. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This is the Mind Muscle Project. Brent Fikowski.
The Professor Project with Brent Fikowski.
Pour one out for regionals. Pour one out for
regionals, guys. Have a beer for. Think about all the good times we had at regionals. It was a good ride, Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it was fun.